Hey, Dr. Salem.
Hey, Dr. Amols, great to be here. Great to be on the show for another night. Interesting topic, especially in the news here.
Yeah, I saw a couple people actually already talking about it a little bit. There were some people on the page saying some things about it. Um, you know, and so it's gonna be interesting to. I don't think a lot of people really understand what it means that the administration is going to be lowering the cost. And I think there's even between doctors, there's a lot of questions about what does it mean though? I mean, is it really going to be lower, or is it just is it just going to be like a special program? You get 10% off and stuff like that. And so, what's interesting for people to know is we actually went and spoke to one of the representatives of this program. So we got some extra information. I also went and spoke to a group that is the competitor to their medication, and spoke to them about what they think about it as well. And so, it's gonna be kind of interesting because, like I said, we get all those different perspectives, and I'd love to know what people think and what their experience has been buying meds. It's interesting. We don't sell them ourselves, and yet, we can't control the price.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so of course the big topic that we're talking about tonight is the price of medications, the price of IVF medications. It's such a huge line item in any IVF cycle. Sometimes can be the biggest line item in an IVF cycle, and the freaking prices on these medications has just not budged. It's actually gone up faster than the price of other medications. When you control for inflation, it's actually gone up faster than the price of other medications. And, I guess that's one of the things that, I'd love to talk about tonight, among other things, is, what are these medications that we use in IVF and why are they so dang expensive?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really interesting conversation I had with this colleague last night because we were talking a little bit about Menopur. And I remember when Menopur was so low cost and they could barely get anyone to use it. Same thing with Prevail in the past. They used to just give it away.
Yeah.
And then several about a decade ago, people started using some more Menopur, and then now it's kind of like a cash cow at this point. I mean, people don't know when not to use it, so people just kind of use it all the time. But there's no competitor out there. And so what's interesting is that, you know, with the cost of meds, the reason they're so high, and I think would be really interesting to talk about today, is not so much just because of it costs a lot to make, but there are some other things out there, such as agreements people have to be on. There's a amount they have to sell or something like that to be able to call themselves a Gonal-F or Follistim distributor, or even a Menopur distributor. And then there's the fact that, I mean, one fact that's always true is the U.S. is always going to be the one who helps pay for all the R&D for the rest of the world. I mean, it's there's no question the med has been sold in other countries for years at a discount of the cost, and clearly they're not losing money there. They're not going to just sell things at a loss. So it just shows you how much the margins must be when they're able to sell them there and make a profit, and then here they sell it, for a lot more.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I don't know if you heard the same thing as me, but I saw even other doctors saying, "Oh, this is just going to be compassionate care," and that they're only going to give it to the people who are the poorest and stuff. And I mean, did you hear those same things?
I mean, definitely in the beginning, we were hearing some of these things. So, of course, we're talking about the government plan, otherwise known as Trump RX plan, where the administration, just to kind of give a very quick summary here, is planning to significantly discount and offer Serono-based medications, which are like the common fertility medications we use, that one of the main brands, up to 84%. And so, in the beginning, we were thinking, well, they can't extend that kind of value or extend that kind of discount to everybody. But in fact, that's what it's looking like. And in the beginning, we were also, a lot of people, and myself included, I was thinking, oh, there'd be loopholes, or maybe like a earnings cap. Like if you make more than 50,000 a year, then you don't qualify for the program or anything, or something like that. but it does not look to be the case. This is just going to be a cash pay price that's going to be discounted. And I think it could really, really impact things. But again, I you know, from your end, you know, if you go back and you were talking to some people about this stuff, I mean, I kind of am curious what you think about why the medications have been so expensive for so long. Because I think that's maybe the first part of this story is why have these medications just never, you know, never gone down in price? And now things are maybe changing, and we might see a significant reduction in the price of IVF medications, which would, of course, increase access to care because it would reduce the whole price of the cycle.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's several things. One of the things is going to be there's no competition, right? So, I mean, generics really are not available in the United States, whereas elsewhere, generics are plentiful and they're a fraction of the cost. There are some companies you and I have talked about that are coming out with some generic medications, but none of the gonadotropins yet have been generic.
Right.
Once those start to come out, I think that's going to lower prices. And it's interesting because I'm surprised that the administration, when they're talking about giving vouchers to allow Serono to be able to bring in other meds in faster, why they didn't allow some of the generic meds to come in faster, because that would have helped reduce the cost significantly right away. The other thing is, again, there's this kind of club that places have to be at. These pharmacies have to sell a certain amount of like Menopur. They have to have so much of a certain drug, and then they get the discount to be able to send it a little bit cheaper to other people. And so again, it's kind of a little bit of a monopoly or almost like a cartel or something with with the meds, and that adds to it as well. But like I said, the other thing too is the fact that, I mean, there is R&D, and it costs a lot to make these drugs. And unfortunately, in the U.S., we do subsidize some of the other countries when it comes to that. We pay more because we can, and other countries get for less. And so it's going to be nice. I mean, I was shocked when I heard 84%. So I spoke to someone the other day who is a competitor, and I asked them, like, is this real? I mean, or is this just going to be baloney? And you and I spoke to the Serono rep, and they were very truthful and said, no, it's for everyone. There's no special amount that you have to make less than to get the deal. And they were even saying that if you actually do have, let's say, lower income, you might even get it at a much lower cost. And so when I was talking to one of my colleagues, he was saying that they're talking in like the $35, $36 range is what they're talking for these units. And I'm not units, sorry, for the pens. And that they're saying even as low as $25 for people who have the major discount. And, I asked him, I was just like, are you guys scared about this? Is it going to affect you guys? He said to me that they think everyone's just going to meet the prices, which to me is the most amazing thing, that if what comes out of this is competition, it's going to help everyone. Did you freeze, Dr. Sam, or is that me freezing? Sorry. Well,
I'm
going to wait a second. But what I was saying is that, like with our clinic, we came into town and we lowered our prices, and all the other clinics started lowering the prices. People have to keep up. They have to be able to keep up with other clinics. Well, the same thing is going to happen in the med area. The difference, though, is that when the margins get smaller, things are going to have to change. And that's something I think there are costs to this that we need to talk about. Dr. Salem, sorry, I know you started saying something and I interrupted you. What did you say?
Oh, no, I was just sorry. I had a little glitch on my side, but I was just saying, in relation to what people are paying right now, I mean, just to give some representative amount, I mean, we're talking, these are numbers at roughly a third to a quarter of what people are paying right now. Is that not right? Again, these are not actual estimates. This is just our very, very vague estimate at something that may come in the future, but at least it gives us some idea as to the extent of this. I mean, this is a very significant cost reduction compared to where we're at right now. with a typical IVF cycle, it's not unusual for a patient to spend, $5,000 or $6,000 on medications. And so if we're talking that could go even to three, or potentially even 2,500, that's a very significant cost reduction there.
Yeah, I mean, when I was talking to my colleague the other day, I mean, for people who have low stims, there's a chance they might even have all their meds under $1,000. It's potential, especially if they get the additional discount for income. It will be interesting to see what happens. He did tell me that all the other companies are going to lower their prices and try to match them. They're not sure how they're going to get to some of those really low prices. But as I was saying, you can't reduce the margins and not have some things change, right? So a lot of these other meds might have to make up for the cost, because all the special things that these pharmacies used to do, maybe free shipping might be gone now. Potentially there's the possibility that now, like, other things might go up in cost, right, to be able to make up for it. They might not be able to offer so much to patients now because they won't have the same margins.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think this is definitely, stands to really shake things up in terms of, again, access to IVF care. Now, interestingly, one of the things that I did want to mention was, what we're learning about this is that this is a cash pay only program, meaning that this is a direct patient purchases the medications through this government endorsed website. So we're not talking about insurance necessarily, but probably there'll be some downstream impacts on, of course, the prices that the insurance companies will be getting the medications for, contracted to get the medications for. So I would be very surprised if we didn't see large scale, price reductions across the board if this really goes into effect.
Yeah, one of the things is, I mean, obviously the company EMD Serono is the one that's doing this, but there are other companies out there, and so I wonder if this takes off, will the other companies join? One thing that we did get in the email back from them was that if you have insurance and it covers meds, then you won't be able to do the program. However, if your insurance doesn't cover meds, you still will be able to use the program and be able to get the meds at a lower price. Now, what was interesting, the competitors said that their program, regardless if you have insurance, will actually be similar priced, and you'll be able to get there. So, like I said, already excited me to go, hey, this is great. That we have all these different people fighting over this. I think one thing that'd be neat to talk about, I know we were talking about last night, if you want to kind of touch base on, is Pergoveris, and kind of what that's going to offer. Because one of the things that the administration allowed was they allowed them to basically be able to lower the price by allowing them to basically fast track this medication through the FDA, which usually takes years into like a couple months.
Yeah. This is obviously the carrot that the government was willing to offer, is that they gave them a voucher to sort of fast track their approval of Pergoveris. Pergoveris is a medication that combines FSH and LH. It's already sold and available in other parts of the world, just not yet in the US. And so this is another medication that would make it onto the market, potentially simplifying some parts of the IVF process in terms of, which medications, when to take them, potentially might even reduce the number of total injections that would have to be administered, throughout the course of the day or throughout the course of the IVF stimulation cycle. Obviously, they need to still go through that approval process, but man, this is a really exciting kind of like little, extra on top of everything. The fact that there's this voucher program. We haven't had a new IVF medication for a very long time. So the fact that any medication could come onto the market is great, let alone one that could get fast tracked. This would be very, very exciting and very, very interesting for, I think, all our patients.
Yeah, and so remind me, this is a medication that is LH actual LH, recombinant LH. It's not LH activity like Menopur, which has HCG in it. This is a true LH. They must somehow increase the half-life of it. Otherwise, because LH has such a short half-life, I'm assuming, again, I am making an assumption that they must add some type of salicylic acid, into it to increase the half-life. But I'd be very interested in knowing that when it comes out.
Yeah, I think we'll learn a lot more about it here in the near future, because it looks like it's very much, everything is in place to kind of roll things out here.
Well, I know we got a couple people that will come on, and again, please, if you have, tell us about your experiences. Tell us how much your meds have cost. Tell us how you found ways to get discounts. Other people are listening, and it might help them. One person asked, what was our opinion on specialty pharmacies that create compounded IVF meds, and mentioned they're about half to 2/3 the price of name brands. And honestly, I had not heard of that. I know typically to be able to make a compounded med, you have to either not have that med available in some dosage or route. So it's not very common to be able to make compounded meds in that way. Have you heard of people using compounded, FSH or stuff like that?
Yeah, I wonder if this viewer's, kind of talking about maybe like compounded progesterone, or
Mm.
micronitrogestrone, things of that
Yeah.
kind, which are not in the same class of biologics that we're talking about here, or small molecule drugs like the ones we're talking about here. So all the medications that we're talking about tonight are actually like made in a cell culture. And back in the day, they used to even be collected from, like menopausal urine. So nuns, for example, for a long time would collect their urine, purify it, and then you would get that, LH and FSH activity, LH and FSH from it, to then formulate into the medications. That obviously created a very limited market of how much of this medication we could get. That's when eventually the pharmaceutical companies became more creative and had these living cell cultures that could then develop FSH. And that's Gonal-F and Follistim and all of those. Now, the compounding pharmacies, they don't have the sophistication to do that. That's beyond their pay grade. But I think what we're talking about is probably like the progesterone and some of the other compounded things.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, like I said, I'm not sure they get away with that or be able to keep doing that for a long period of time. Because, like I said, when there's already drugs out there, you would have to make some type of formula that no one else has, and then you're allowed to. And one of the things is that one person was nice enough to share with how much they spent, and they said they spent, I like this one. She said she spent $66,500.
Yeah,
And
man.
what's crazy about that is, I mean, for our IVF cycles, we charge 6,500. Matter of fact, back in the past, we used to only charge like 5,000. Unfortunately, things have changed. Everyone knows that cost has gone up with inflation, but it's crazy to think that it can cost more for the meds than the treatment. And I think
No.
a lot of places where the cost of treatment is so high that the meds seem like an afterthought. But as places like us that try to make things more affordable, I mean, that the meds really seem extremely expensive.
Yeah.
And so this is gonna be huge. I think especially huge for programs like ourselves.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, 6,500, I mean, man, that's so much. I know that so many people would rather put that towards, I always think about the cost of these medications, and, if even we could just bring that down by half, if you could take that other half and set it aside for your new parent fund. I mean, man, that would go such a long way. A lot of people have to finance their medications and everything. And obviously, one cycle of IVF is not enough for everybody. So now we're talking about, twice that for the price of the medications, because the medications, you can't, you just use them all, they're gone, So I think $6,500, believe it or not, is a number I see a lot these days. And thanks for sharing that number.
Yeah, I remember when my wife and I went through every extra vial that we had to buy. It was just like, oh, that's another $500, another $500. Like it was so expensive. And I remember just thinking like, please don't go any longer. It's going to we're not going to have any money left by the end of this. So, before we jump, we're going to bring on a guest to Steve here. But before we bring him on, I wanted to give a shout out to someone. So I'm not trying to be too political here, but Elizabeth Lee, who said, "Hey docs," she is running for a congressional seat in Arizona. So if you're in Arizona, you're in her district, please look at her. She has been a fertility nurse. She's very, very intelligent. And, we need people to work with this administration or the next administration to keep pushing fertility stuff. So if you haven't heard of her, Elizabeth Lee, she's running for Congress, and look her up. Well, let's get Steve on here.
And let me add my support for Elizabeth, even though I can't vote in Arizona because I'll be thrown in jail. I've known Elizabeth for a few years now, and she's just amazing. Her passion, and it's not just about fertility, though that certainly is part of what she's bringing to the table. It's just everything about her. She's just a passionate person who has gone through some hard health challenges, but now she's recovered, and I'm excited to see her in this new role. So, yeah,
hoping she gets there, and I think she'll help the fertility. Our fertility world, and then that's something she's passionate about, but she's also passionate about other things too, healthcare for people and stuff. So, like I said, people should look into her. I said, I know she's a great person. Yeah. So, Steve, for us, I mean, one of the things I sent you a message earlier, I was asking you, I was saying, hey, has Canada ever done anything like this? Because obviously other countries do force the companies to sell for a certain price. There's they say this is the max you can sell it for. And so that's kind of what's happening in other countries, but this is a little bit different. But how has this worked out in, let's say, in Canada?
In Canada, it's interesting. The doctors in all the different provinces, so the equivalent of the states, are allowed to dispense directly to consumers in outpatient clinics. Now, the key is they're supposed to not make profit on it, but they can recover cost. And so I'd say about 75, but they can't get insurance payment for it. They have to only get cash. So it's the equivalent of the cash payment, but it's dispensed, held in inventory and dispensed from the clinics. Now, I'm interested, I sent you some numbers there. I'm just curious as to how does that compare in terms of the average cash cost? We indicated the Gonal-F pen, what is it? Do you have a sense of how much the 450 IU pen would cost typically for not necessarily a subsidized patient, but an average cash patient? What would they pay for a 450 IU pen?
So from what I understand is the 84% off is off the MSRP.
Yes.
Which is currently around $2 something. It's this most ridiculous price. No one pays that.
Yeah.
Everyone gets at least the basic discount down to, I want to say it's around $69 or something like that, $68.
Interesting. Then this is one case where the U.S. is paying less because the average cash price to a patient for that pen is around $240, $250, depending on the clinic. So, but in comparison, the Canadian fees for IVF treatment are lower. But I guess that is one part where it's actually higher, because typically you hear about Canadian meds being lower on average. But this is one case where I guess it is a little bit higher, or a good bit higher, because though I imagine they do have some of those subsidies on an income basis as they would. So the income-based reduction is probably still available. But when I was COO at the Fertility Partners, I can't recall that being, something that happened a lot per se. So
and to clarify, that's for the 300 pen, not for the 450 pen.
That's for the 450 pen. 250 was for the 450 pen.
Yeah. So it's for the 300 pen. Maybe I'm saying wrong. Dr. Salem, is it $68 per 75 units, or is it $68 for the 300 pen?
Yeah, I think it's a little less than $1 a unit in the US. A little less than $1.
Okay, so then Canada would be less. If that's $1 a unit, then it'd be somewhere probably around 400 for a 450 pen. whereas in Canada it's around 250 through the clinic to the patient.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the cost when it goes down to this point will be about $50 or less per unit. It will go down to.
Okay.
So.
Okay. So you would still be around maybe 200 and 190 for a 450 pen kind of thing. But still, I mean, that's significant. And,
Yeah.
you know, part of the issue, of course, in Canada, we don't have the PBMs don't play as much of a role because in the US, of course, the PBMs really, frankly, drive more costs than they supposedly are supposed to save. And that's part of the reason why, you know, in the US, you start off at a very high MSRP and then, you know, the PBMs take some of that and then, you know, the pharmacies take some of that and et cetera. So there's a stacking of costs that go all the way up. But, you know, this is, like, I agree with you. This is a good move. Now, I could also see it just speak from a Serono standpoint. This was a smart move for them because unless, to your point, that unless Ferring and Organon, you know, respond, Serono is going to be able to get, you know, more of that volume at the lower price as long as their docs are willing to prescribe Gonal-F, et cetera, versus the equivalent. And they're going to get the acceleration on Pergoveris, which is already available in Canada. And that's an interesting thing that I could see Ferring trying to do because they haven't got Recavel yet in the US. It is in Canada. It's a very popular, it's used quite a bit in Canada relative to Gonal-F. So I could see Ferring trying to do something similar because there's also part of this deal is avoiding the 25% inbound tariff that they would have gotten as well too. So
one of the things is you said about, you know, are they going to bring the prices down? I mean, I would, if as a doctor, if I knew there was a company that had the price down to like $30 compared to the one at $68,
yeah.
I mean, how could you do that, man? As a doctor, that doesn't seem right. So, I mean, I would assume everyone will, or at least I know our patients are cost conscious. But something interesting, I was talking about my buddy Ravi, who's a fertility doctor, and he was talking to some of his patients and just asking this simple question. He's like, "Hey, have you heard about this whole thing with the government lowering cost?"
Yeah.
And then what he told me is only one person through like the entire week even knew about it. Yet,
wow.
At our clinic, like most of the patients know about it.
Yeah.
And now he's in a neighborhood that's a little more well off. And so it's kind of interesting how the people who might know about this, you know, will use it. And the people who don't may not even be aware.
Well, that's the typical thing with any kind of discounting opportunity. It's those who need it who really go after it. And that's often down to how important it is for them to be able to take advantage of that savings. And I could see also, I would hope clinics advise their insurance patients if that their insurance coverage has the flexibility to say shift between meds coverage and treatment coverage, that they say, hey, it's probably better for you to shift all your coverage to treatment and use your health spending account or whatever, if you've got the flexibility, and get your meds that way, because overall it would lower your cost. That's the kind of advice that I'm hoping clinics, you know, provide to their patients to be able to examine what, and it's not going to be all insurance coverage is going to enable that, but hopefully a good portion will, so that you can shift the coverage around and take advantage of that lower cost.
One of the things I know I was worried about, and Dr. Salem shared that concern I had, was, you know, when certain states, let's say, mandate fertility coverage,
yes,
insurance will find every way they can or have a loophole or get around it.
Yeah.
And so they'll go, fine, we offered it, but we offer $1,000.
Yeah.
And the concern is then that could potentially stop some patients from being able to get these discounts. Obviously, They can just say, oh, I don't have insurance and buy it directly and not use their insurance. But it's one of the things I always get worried, like when the government gets involved, you know, and I'm hoping this one is altruistic and good, but, you know, it's worrisome. The thing we laughed about the other day, Dr. Salem and I, was them calling it Trump RX. I mean, I was just like, why? Why Trump RX? Why not call it government RX or something? Like, why Trump RX? It's just
that brings a great point. That is, who's going to actually run it? You know, behind the scenes, is it going to be direct shipment from EMD? Is it going to be actually, you know, through a wholesale distributor mechanism? Because my one concern is, until it's up and running, you know, they better get their delivery down perfect, because the last thing you want to do is to delay a stim start because they didn't get the meds to the patient in time.
Which is a big problem in this realm, right? Like, and I think that execution, like offering it and execution, are going to be two very different things. And you could imagine, you know, there's a lot of examples where the government subsidized thing is cheaper and on paper looks better and everything, but actually getting the thing is so dang hard that it's not even worth it anymore.
Yeah.
Obviously, we worry about that too.
Yeah. And hopefully Sirona and the others, if they follow suit, will still provide the level of customer support and online advice, et cetera, that they've always provided, even to their, to their insurance payers, et cetera, because that's also very important.
We did speak to them about this a little bit and asked them how this distribution is going to be. Was it only going to be from like this TrumpRx website?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. It sounds like that site is just going to link to the other places, and your typical like Fairing, Integrity, some of these places are going to be the ones who release the meds, and you'll go through them. So
good. That'll make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, the thing here that really has to happen is, and this is the bet that everyone's betting on, is if we bring the price down, then more people will do it, and the volume will the profits will still be there. It just has to go through more volume, and this is exactly what happens in Europe. Just high volume, lower margins, you still make it. And that's actually how our clinic works. I mean,
and also that's a way, unfortunately, that they're going to, as a way of forestalling competition from generics or biosimilars, that, because if you reduce the price so much, then it's going to take away the potential profit that a biosimilar coming into the market could achieve. And it makes it a lot harder for that to happen.
Yeah. Do you remember, Dr. Sam, what's the name of that drug company? It's like Mihil or something, the one that does the generics?
Yes, I'm blanking on the exact spelling of it.
MEH something. I'm going blank for some reason for the name. Steve, you know what I'm talking about?
I think so.
Yeah.
Are they out of India?
No, they aren't. They're here in the U.S., but they're taking drugs from Europe and bringing them over. But when we talk to them about just even bringing, generic medications over, they said that the timeline is so long and millions and millions to bring it over. Yeah. And so, I'm happy about the reduction, but I still do believe that there is a place for generics. And I know both Dr. Salem and I were willing to, we're like, listen, we'll chip in to help get the generics here so we can get the price lower. Because we know the biggest obstacle, even at our clinic and other clinics like CMY and clinics like Positive IVF, is the cost of the meds. Yeah. And we're all trying, the groups who are trying to bring the cost down, they're all trying to help if we can, but there's just a limit to what we can do.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely a limitation. And, just speaking to that, limitation, there are a lot of people, when they look at they look at the overall price of IVF in different countries, that does play into their equation. They're looking at it and they're like, oh my gosh, if I did IVF in Turkey, well, I could get the medications for a quarter of the cost that I could get them here. And they're the same medication. It's the same manufacturer, the same medication. So, I think there's so much variance across the board with the price of these meds. And I think hopefully we can just, not bring the other prices up, but bring these prices down.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to give it to Trump, negotiating the most favored nation. I have a thing, like you said, about the pharmacy name, but you've got to give it to him for, kind of making this work to bring down that cost. Certainly there are other things that we're hoping for in terms of pushing for more mandates, et cetera, but this is at least an initial step. So
yes. Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, I think this will help many people, and hopefully make IVF more accessible. We always talk about, for every 4 or 5 IVF cycles that are needed in the US, only one is actually being delivered, and this is probably a big barrier.
And New Directions and Positive and CNY are all enabling far more to get that treatment that they couldn't otherwise afford. So again, my hat's off to you. So
yeah, the biggest benefit that's going to come from this is going to be the competition.
yeah,
I mean, the other companies are going to have to drop their prices, and when they do, it's going to be better for everyone. And
exactly.
you know, I'm sure they're all scared about it and stuff. And like I said, that's the biggest positive will come out of this from Trump doing this. And he really did. I mean, whether you like him or hate him,
Yeah.
he really did make this deal by allowing them to, you know, have a reductions in the tariffs,
Yeah.
allowing them to have the waiver, the bring it through the FDA faster. I mean, he had to give concessions,
Yeah.
but in the end, those concessions are allowing this. And
Yeah.
so my hope is that it goes a little further than this, because this is still, you know, minor, because other than my clinic, Positive IVF, and CNY, maybe a couple other small, you know, clinics that are really quite altruistic, you know, trying to help people and reduce cost. You know, it's just a little bit. What about all the other clinics?
Bit,
you know, how are we gonna get it for everyone else? Because we can't be everywhere at those clinics. And so, you know, that's where I'm hoping it's just the first step in a lot of steps.
I'd be very surprised if Ferring doesn't have something soon, because they have been dying to get Recavel into the U.S. forever. So I could see them, you know, working hard to make an equivalent deal soon. So
yeah. By the way, while we were talking, Elizabeth, who must be the one watching, wrote back Methyl, which is MEITHEAL. That's the company, that's the generic one I was telling you about. That generic meds. They have like generic Ganirelix. They have a couple other generics out there, but unfortunately, they don't have gonadotropins yet. So it'd be nice when they do. But what, anything else you can tell us? I mean, to the people who are watching this, who, you know, are hoping that the med costs come down in Canada, there's any history there that we can learn from?
Well, I do think that as the competition picks up, that does, to your point, that's the key thing, getting the competition going, you know, having somebody make the first step. I'm surprised it was Serono making the first step, because usually it's a smaller one, like a Ferring, who would make the first step in order to get more market share. But I think Serono must have thought that the Pergoveris value in avoiding the tariffs was enough to justify this. So, but yeah, I would agree with you that the key thing is getting the competition in. Now, hopefully they also work to expand, to your point, to the generics and the biosimilars, to get them through the FDA quicker as well too. Yeah.
I mean, if he does that, I mean, prices will go down tremendously. And then the next step is, you know, make an agreement with the clinics, you know, with these big organizations, and just say like, hey, how can we bring the cost down for the everyday person?
Yeah.
The one hard part, and this would be interesting to talk to Dr. Salem about this, is the people who have coverage but don't have med coverage.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have insurance coverage, but they don't have med coverage.
Mm-hmm.
And that stops them from going through.
Yeah. Well, this should make it a lot easier for them to be able to do that. So
yeah, many times the worst thing is having some partial med coverage, you know, because then they have to apply it. Then they're getting a completely different price cost structure. And I know a lot of patients. I was just talking to a patient today, guys, who she said in her first IVF cycle she went through, and she had quote unquote $15,000. I kid you not, $15,000 of medication coverage, and it only covered half of her cycle. And I said, that's impossible. How? And she showed me the list prices that she had to buy from a specific pharmacy. And sure enough, they were charging her near retail prices, which are made up prices. You know, nobody pays those prices.
Exactly.
And so, you know, those $15,000 disappeared. And then she was kind of, you know, pigeon-toed into getting the medication still from that pharmacy for the rest of her cycle, ended up spending an additional $7,000. Right.
Yeah,
so
this is where hopefully, if you choose not to use if your meds coverage isn't that great and you can just not use it, to be able to get a lower out-of-pocket cost, that should be allowed as well too. That would be a key thing. Just, hey, who knows that you've got this med coverage? And this is where the clinics can help by being able to show what's the average cost per cycle for the different meds if you went through Trump RX, so they can quickly determine, compared to their meds coverage, what would be the out-of-pocket for them if they've got a large deductible or something.
I tell even patients sometimes, if I say, if your meds eat into your costs and it's like you have one bucket and it's not set for meds, don't get the meds from them because you'll eat through it so fast. Two cycles, you'll eat through it. Whereas if you just buy the meds separately, it'd be cheaper. Here's a really interesting question that I have for both of you. And that is, are we causing a lot of this as the fertility clinics? And hear me out for a second. You know, someone the other day said to me, I think it was, they were talking about like conservatives saying that, you know, they're against, some people are against IVF. And I said, well, they're not against IVF. They're against this idea of embryos being there that are never used. And I was telling them, you know, in other countries, they don't give as much medicine.
Mm-hmm.
They do very little. They make very few eggs. And they just go through multiple cycles. And so they actually just go through multiple cycles, make few eggs, very few embryos. But in the US, because it's so much, no one just wants 4 eggs.
Yeah.
They want the 20 eggs. They want the multiple embryos because of the initial cost. And so the question is, are we also making it more expensive because we are pushing them harder? Whereas let's say we did do these smaller cycles, just like in our European counterparts, and use maybe a lot less meds, the cost would even go down then too. And so I'm just wondering, you know, do you see that? I don't know if that's way in Canada, or they're just like us and they try to make a bunch of eggs and give them a bunch of embryos. But what have you seen there?
Well, I would say they tend to stimulate less in Canada, but not to the point that you're describing. But that is an interesting point. And part of it would be to work out what the economics, because it does come down to, you know, what would give you the lowest cost to baby. Now, it might impact time to baby given multiple cycles, but it could potentially reduce the overall cost to baby. And part of that is depending on, you know, to your point, what's the variable cost of the meds? And of course, what's the variable cost in the lab in managing, you know, fewer embryos, for example. So it'd be an interesting exercise to do as part of a discussion around minimizing cost to baby.
Well, Steve, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. And as always, then I do still have that plan. We're going to do that podcast together.
I'm looking forward to it. And I will see you at ASRM. So
see you then.
Thanks so much.
That's a reminder too that, you know, we will be going to the ASRM. And matter of fact, our next show will be about ASRM and what we see there. Remember, if you go to our website, spermmeetsegg.com, you can actually ask questions now, and they can be ranked the best questions, and we'll answer them on. Again, people can always come on the show as well. So they're saying, you know, going back to that point I was just saying a minute ago, I mean, do you think, I mean, obviously there are some people that need to make more eggs, right? So when there's 38, you know, they want to have 4 kids, we got to make extra embryos. But what about this idea about how much meds we use? I mean, I've seen doctors use, you know, 900 units of medication in a cycle. And I mean, there's no question the rate of return changes as you keep going higher and higher. It's not like if you go double the dose, you get double eggs. There's eventually a point you go another double and you go, now you only get 1 more egg. And so, I mean, sometimes I think we have to question, you know, is it the right doses? Are we giving too much, not hurting the eggs, but just too much being, we're wasting their money?
Yeah. I think it's a great point. I mean, I think, you know, of course, one of our big goals in IVF is just to be successful, right? Like we never want somebody to come away from a cycle and, you know, come up short. And I think, you know, where we're at in the modern world is like everybody is kind of measuring the benchmarks until they get to that baby, but they're measuring them with, well, how many eggs did I get? How many did fertilize? How many embryos do I have? How many were able to get tested, etc. But I agree. I mean, I think there's probably a fair bit of excess in the system. You know, there's a little bit of fat in the system, if you will. But you don't really know it except in hindsight. You know, if you were that person that goes through and gets 1 embryo, but you really, really, really wanted to have 2 children, then you have to go through a second cycle. You know, that's when you would be really, you know, bummed out if your doctor, you know, held back on the doses of the medications. But it's such a good point that, you know, hey, maybe there's also a different way of doing this. I know in Japan, for example, they stim people with very low doses. A lot of them will, obviously this is not, you know, every REI in Japan, but many practice this method of using Clomid and very low doses of medications. And the patients will go through quite a few cycles of IVF, of retrieval, with the idea that, you know, you don't need these high doses of medications and everything. Now in the US, in part because the cost of the IVF cycle, that fixed cost is so high, you might as well just kind of pay a little more and get more eggs and kind of, you know, a little bit of a bigger is better approach, not surprisingly here, but, you know, I don't know. I mean, I definitely looked at like modeling studies, people thinking about this differently and saying, well, what if we did 2 or 3 cycles at very low doses? What do we get? And it still doesn't seem like the cost to baby is low enough in those models to justify it.
Yeah, so there's still too much initial cost that you have to put in for the treatment that, you know, it doesn't. But I mean, if you could get that cost down, you know, it could be there. I mean, in our clinic, it obviously shows up more because the cost of what we charge is so close to the cost of the medications that it really shows up. But, you know, a clinic that, let's say in San Francisco charging 35,000, you know, you balk at 5,000. You're like, oh, what's that? You know. Now we do, you know, at our clinic, and I know eventually you're going to have this too. We've been doing the IVC, and you know, we've been doing that at a fraction of the cost. Man, $3,000, we include 80% of the meds. That's a situation where, again, that may come up for some people. It wouldn't be good for someone who's 40 or 38, but, you know, someone's 24 and just wants a kid this time and can go through again. I think that's where, if we really want to get costs down, we almost have to change the way we do it. Stop thinking that everyone needs to have this super big IVF, tons of eggs, but we have to just look and go, you know what, you're 22 years old, and, you know, keep the costs down, do this little simple treatment, get you pregnant. Sure, you don't have any extra embryos, that's fine. When you come back at 24, you're gonna be perfectly fine to have another kid.
Yeah, no, I think that's it's, you know, really strong point there. And again, you know, it just has to do with how we organize things, how we, you know, what do we put first, what do we put next in terms of our you know, prioritization of some of these things. I mean, just to get back to your point about the IVC, you know, where you by design kind of go with a lower dose of medications. You don't want to stimulate and get a ton of eggs. You want to get a reasonable number of eggs to have them incubate within the baby pod, as you call it. I like that name. And, you know, that's an approach that is extraordinarily cost effective when you get high quality eggs, and works super well. I mean, the success rates can be very, very, very good when you select the right patients. If you just were to have everybody and anybody go through that, I think you would see that you'd miss out on some of that cost effectiveness, let's call it. But it's a great intermediate in some ways between maybe an IUI and a traditional IVF cycle.
You know, when you're going through IVF, one of the funny things that happens is, I mean, well, I should say funny, it's actually kind of painful when it happens. But, you know, if you drop a medicine and it breaks, you know, you look at it and you're like, oh my God, there's hundreds of dollars there. I had this image I made of like, IVF meds are so expensive that like literally you're getting like people would rob you for them because they're just so expensive. And you know, it's just really out of control, you know, like it really is so expensive to the point where, you know, I've had women accidentally make a mistake and then just cry because they're like, that's $300 right there, you know, or something like that. And it's tough, you know, I'm happy they're making a change. I'm hoping this leads to a bigger change by having the competition. But there's obviously a lot more we have to go. I think the biggest thing too is, you know, just getting other clinics to bring those prices down. You know, I can't tell you how many people I've seen celebrate this, how many clinics celebrate it. And yet I go back to their site, the prices are still the same. I'm like, well, why isn't it lower then? I mean, if you agree with this, you want to make it lower, what are you going to do? Right? I mean, that's the thing. Everyone wants everyone else to do something, but what are the clinics going to do? And there are some of us that are doing it, and I'm proud of them. But you know, like I said, I feel like it's just not enough yet. Not just meant. We need to do more than that.
Yeah. Yep. I'm hoping with the threat of, we're talking about what other places, where prices can come down. Definitely, I agree with you. I think some of the IVF monitoring, the retrieval, all those things, I would love to see nationally people bringing the prices down there. The other one is honestly genetic testing, and they have done a good job with this. I have to give them credit where credit is due. They have, compared to the early days, come down on the cost of PGT. And in the early days, you could really make an argument that it wasn't very cost effective. And I think, when you do most analyses now, you say, well, this is, if it helps you avoid, one quote unquote unnecessary transfer, it becomes pretty cost effective pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to get where it goes back into that idea of how many eggs you make, right? Because if you're doing PGT, unfortunately, the way it is that it's hard to just charge a per embryo price from the beginning because there's so much setup costs. Like you have to start with a needle, and that needle costs you a certain amount, whether you do 1 or you do 3. And so then you do have to make more embryos. So it like I said, it's a little bit of a vicious circle in some ways that, you want to bring down costs, but as the technology gets better, it adds more costs again. So it's like we get one down and another one goes back up. So
Yep.
Well, a very interesting episode. I really hope everyone comes to the next episode. We're going to talk about all the things that we saw at ASRM. I'll try to take a bunch of pictures of everything. Usually there's some really funny swag that's there. It's usually some type of sperm or some kind of funny thing like that. But, ask your questions and go to our site, and then you can rank them. And then that way we'll talk about them on the show. And again, we always love when people can be guests as well. And, but, anything else you have to say, Dr. Salem, about this?
No, I think I'm just very excited to see what comes next. We'll keep people updated. I mean, this is definitely an evolving topic. And so I think we will keep people updated on what's coming, around the corner with it. And we're going to help our patients, and we're going to help all our viewers take advantage of it. I mean, I want everybody that can take advantage of a lower price to do so.
Yeah. As soon as it comes out, we're going to let everyone know how to get it, what you need to do. And, really you just have to be an advocate for yourself. Make sure you look for these, but it's going to start in January 2026. So don't expect it right now, but when it comes out, we'll definitely have information out there for everyone, how to use it.
That's wonderful.
Well, perfect. Well, it was great seeing you. And I look forward to talking to you here in a couple of weeks. I'll see you at ASRM.
That sounds wonderful. I'll see you. Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So, got the knowledge, the power to grow. Sperm meets egg, let the healing flow. Fertile grounds, we explore. Life's a journey, so much in store. Got the knowledge, the power to grow. Sperm meets egg, let the healing flow. Step in, let's talk about the facts. Women's health, let's watch how it cracks. Cycles turning, it's more than just chance. In this moment, we're taking a stance. Voices rising, we're breaking the mold. Deep conversations, we're watching them fold. From the roots to the stars is one and the same. Empowered together, we're winning this game.